You're still here, still breathing, still upright. After everything that should have shattered you into 1,000 fragments of psychological debris, you remain not just alive, but functional. Not just functional, but operating at a level that defies every textbook, every diagnosis, every grim prediction. Look at you, standing there, reading these words. While countless others, people who endured even half of what you survived, are right now slumped in sterile therapists' offices, bottles of prescription medication lined up like tiny tombstones on their nightstands, begging for the cacophony in their minds to finally, mercifully, quiet down. They are sitting in the dim glow of a computer screen at 2 a.m., scrolling through self-help articles, desperately trying to understand why their thoughts feel like shards of glass. They are in hospital rooms, under the watchful eye of nurses, barely able to string a coherent sentence together. They are broken. But not you. By every single standard of human psychology, by every model taught in universities, by every case study published in prestigious journals, by every well-meaning therapist's worst-case scenario. You should have been institutionalized by now. You should be a statistic, a cautionary tale, a name filed away in a clinician's notes. Subject: extreme trauma. Outcome: complete psychological collapse. They should be studying you as a failure of the human condition. Yet here you are. Your hands aren't shaking. Your eyes are clear, not clouded by the fog of dissociation. Your heartbeat is steady, a rhythmic, defiant pulse against the silence of despair. You woke up this morning. You made breakfast. Maybe you cooked eggs, maybe just toast. You got dressed. You walked out the door. You smiled, genuinely smiled, at the barista who handed you your coffee. You engaged in small talk with a colleague. You performed your job. You interacted with the world as if your psyche hadn't been used as a battlefield, as if your mind hadn't been the testing ground for emotional weapons of mass destruction, as if your soul hadn't been run through a gauntlet designed specifically to erase you. They see normal. They see someone who is coping. They see someone who is fine. But they have no clue about the war zone behind your eyes. They cannot perceive the craters left in your consciousness, deep, jagged wounds where hope used to reside. They are oblivious to the neural pathways you had to painstakingly rebuild around the damage. They don't see the intricate network of bypasses and detours your brain constructed so you could still function while carrying the weight of the apocalypse. They see a person. You are a survivor's monument. Let's be utterly blunt. Others who went through what you did collapsed. They folded. They imploded. They checked themselves into those sterile facilities with white walls, fluorescent lights that hum too loudly, and visiting hours strictly enforced. Right now, this very minute, they are somewhere trying to explain to a professional, someone with a clipboard and a calm, detached voice, why they no longer trust their own reality. They are struggling to articulate why every conversation feels like a setup, a trap laid with careful precision. Why every compliment feels like a hook. Why every expression of love feels like a weapon aimed directly at their chest, poised to stab the moment they lower their guard. They are sitting there, tears streaming down their face, whispering, "I don't know what's real anymore." But you anomaly, you sit here, absorbing this text like trauma is just another language you've mastered. You are fluent in the difference between yourself and them. They tried desperately to cling to their sanity, to remain whole, to stay human through the storm. They fought to keep their old selves intact. You took a different route. You didn't resist the madness. You let the madness in. You shook hands with insanity and demanded it teach you its rules. You didn't push back against the psychological warfare. You analyzed it. You didn't push back against the mental torture. You observed it. You didn't pretend to remain whole. You learned how to operate while broken. And let's not for a single second gloss over what you survived. It wasn't minor adversity. It wasn't a bad breakup or a rough patch at work. It was systematic destruction. The gaslighting. Oh, the gaslighting. It wasn't just occasional denial. It was a full-scale campaign to rewrite your history while you were still living it. They insisted events didn't happen. They denied words you clearly heard, spoken in a voice you'd recognize anywhere. They twisted reality until it became something negotiable. Are you sure that happened? You must be misremembering. You're too sensitive. You're imagining things. For others, this level of distortion sends them scrambling. They start keeping journals, meticulously detailed logs, just to keep track of what is real. They record conversations on their phones, playing them back over and over, seeking validation. They become obsessed with proof, because their own mind has become an unreliable narrator. But you learned to exist in multiple realities simultaneously. You understood that their reality was a construct, a weapon. So you operated within yours. You knew the truth, even if no one else did. You didn't need a recording. You knew. And you functioned within that knowledge, regardless of their denials, the isolation tactics. They severed you from anyone who might have recognized the truth. This wasn't accidental. It was surgical. With precision that would impress a military strategist, they dismantled your support system. They whispered lies disguised as concern into the ears of your friends. Have you noticed how unstable she's been acting lately? Maybe you shouldn't spend so much time with her. It might be unhealthy for you too. They planted doubts that spread like a slow, malignant growth. They turned allies into skeptics. They made sure that when you finally broke, when you needed someone, anyone to believe you, no one would. For others, this level of isolation is catastrophic. They end up talking to walls. They beg imaginary companions for validation. They become convinced the entire world has turned against them, and they retreat further and further into a solitary, terrifying hell. But you became your own witness, your own jury, your own judge. You didn't need external validation because you knew the truth. You held court within your own mind. You testified on your own behalf. You delivered the verdict. They are lying. I am not crazy. I am valid. And you moved forward weaponized affection. They handed out affection like wartime rations. Just enough to keep you hopeful. Never enough to let you thrive. A text message at 2 a.m. a fleeting hug. A compliment so rare it felt like manna from heaven. They watched you starve for connection. They reveled in your desperation. They knew exactly how much to give you to keep you hooked, but never enough to truly nourish your soul. They devoured your neediness. For most people, this creates attachment wounds that shadow them for decades. They become unable to form bonds without fearing abandonment. They cannot receive love without immediately bracing for betrayal. They live in a constant state of anxiety, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But you learned to generate your own warmth in the middle of their manufactured winter. You became your own source of comfort. You discovered inner resources they never dreamed existed. While they were trying to starve you, you were learning to fast. You discovered you didn't need their validation, their affection, their approval to survive. You cultivated self-compassion. You learned to hold yourself through the cold. The double binds. They trapped you in psychological double binds where every choice was wrong. Stay, and you're weak. Leave, and you're selfish. Speak up, and you're dramatic. Stay silent, and you're complicit. Every action earned punishment. Every decision was a lose-lose scenario. They built a maze where every exit looped back into shame. For others, navigating this is an endless, exhausting cycle. They are still wandering those invisible hallways, bumping into walls they can't name, feeling constantly punished no matter what they do. But you You burned that maze to the ground. You took the matches of your fury, the gasoline of your resolve, and you incinerated the entire structure. Then you walked through the ashes. You refused to be trapped by their impossible choices. You created a third option. You stepped outside the framework they built. You operated beyond their binary. You absorbed torture like it was a routine. While others were vomiting from the poison they served you, you were developing immunity. You woke up to manipulation and drank it with your morning coffee. You faced betrayal before noon and treated it like breakfast. You swallowed enough emotional abuse to flatten a skyscraper. And somehow, you asked for more. Not because you enjoyed it, not because you are masochistic, but because somewhere along the way, as the poison entered your system, you ceased being merely human and became something harder to break. They fed you lies, and you learned to extract truth from the flavor. Not their truth. Their lies were the menu, but the truth about what kind of person serves poison with a smile. They handed you counterfeit love, and you learned to identify the artificial aftertaste. You became a sommelier of suffering, able to detect the vintage of someone's vindictiveness from across a crowded room. You can taste malice in a tone. You can smell deception in a pause. What kind of system turns pain into power? What kind of metabolism converts trauma into momentum? What kind of appetite grows sharper the more it's denied? You are not ordinary. You are not built on the default settings. You are what emerges when a soul is pushed far past its breaking point and discovers it was never made of something rigid at all. You're fluid now, formless, uncontainable, slipping around every barrier they try to build. They thought they were starving you, but you were fasting, learning how to live on nothing, learning how to thrive in emptiness, learning how to let hunger educate you instead of destroy you. Now you can go longer without their validation than they can go without your reaction. You've trained yourself to survive on resources they never understood. You feed on frequencies they can't even detect. You draw energy from silence, from solitude, from the sheer act of continuing. So ask yourself, what raised you? Because whatever shaped you wasn't teaching you how to be normal. It was preparing you for combat. Every childhood disappointment was weight training. Every early betrayal was another layer of callus thickening your emotional skin. Every moment left alone in the dark taught you how to see without a light. You weren't simply neglected. You were forged in the fire of dysfunction. Maybe it was a parent who loved you the wrong way, loved you conditionally, loved you like you were a defective project that needed constant fixing. They taught you early that affection had to be earned and could vanish without warning. They taught you that emotional safety was not something you could rely on. So you adapted. You learned to live without it. You learned to walk barefoot across emotional glass without flinching. You learned that relying on them was a recipe for pain, so you relied on yourself. Maybe it was the environment, the chaos that forced you to grow up before you even had teeth. You became the adult in the room before you were tall enough to reach a light switch. You were negotiating peace treaties before you learned multiplication tables. You were reading emotional weather patterns, the shifts in mood, the undercurrents of anger, the silent threats. Long before you read books, you acted as a miniature crisis manager in a house full of oversized children. You learned diplomacy in a war zone. Or maybe the cause was something nameless, something that lingered in the corners of your childhood whispering, "You're going to need to be stronger than this." Something that gave you practice rounds of abandonment, rehearsals for betrayal, pop quizzes in surviving the impossible. Whatever it wasn't raising a person. It was manufacturing a force of nature. Your operating system isn't built like theirs. When their computers encounter error messages, they crash. When you hit an error, you evolve. You're running software that shouldn't exist, protocols written in languages that haven't been invented yet. You process pain at speeds that defy psychological logic. They hit you with betrayal, And your system didn't just recover, it upgraded, adding new defenses, new capabilities, new predictive algorithms that sense incoming damage before it arrives. You're not healing, you're evolving. Every wound becomes more than a scar, it becomes a feature. Trauma responses morph into tools. You've gone through factory resets that would leave others permanently corrupted, manually damaged. Your entire reality has been uninstalled and reinstalled more times than you can count, and each time you return, you come back as a newer, more complex, more formidable version. You're not just surviving updates, you're requiring them. Your error handling is unmatched. Where others see blue screens of death, you see optimization. Where others crash, you gain insight. Every malfunction teaches you something crucial about your own code. Every virus that fails to destroy you becomes part of your internal firewall. Yes, you're still standing, but you know it isn't pretty. You're vertical, but you're not the same shape you once were. You're functional, but your function has changed. You're alive, but not in any way they understand. Some days you feel the cracks, the welded seams, the misaligned joints, the pieces held together by sheer will. But you don't hide them anymore. You wear them as armor. Let people see that you can function while fractured. Let them wonder how you're walking when you're technically broken. You stand differently now, not with pride, but with a kind of defiant certainty. The certainty of someone who has already survived their own death. You don't stand tall. You stand inevitable, like gravity, like time, like a phenomenon that cannot be stopped by conventional means. They keep waiting for you to fall, expecting your collapse, imagining the day they hear you finally checked out or broken down. But every single day, you disappoint them. By continuing to exist, by showing up, by refusing to deliver the surrender they've been anticipating. Your very existence is an act of rebellion against every natural law, claiming you should be horizontal by now. And the truth they'll never admit is simple. You terrify them, not because you're dangerous in a traditional physical way, but because you prove that the weapons that destroy most people don't work on everyone. You are living proof that some people simply cannot be broken using the usual methods. You are the anomaly that forces people to question everything they thought they knew about the limits of the human mind. You don't fit into their models, their theories, their neat little categories. You don't conform to the expected outcomes of trauma. You're the outlier that statisticians dread, the exception that invalidates their formulas. You're a walking contradiction, a reminder that even the most sophisticated forms of psychological warfare eventually hit a wall. And somehow, you are that wall. You survived experiences engineered to crush you, endured pressures calibrated to break you, processed realities that were meant to distort you beyond repair. Your existence alone challenges the very concept of human limitation. You're the glitch in their matrix, the miscalculation that throws off their entire equation. The unforeseen variable their system wasn't prepared to handle. They believed they understood how to dismantle a person. They studied psychology like a weapon manual, memorized the weak points, what to trigger, what to exploit, what to twist. They learned which fears create paralysis, which wounds reopen the deepest pain, which insecurities unravel the strongest resolve. They honed techniques to turn people inside out, to collapse them from within. But while they were busy pushing buttons, you were quietly taking control of the wiring. While they were hacking your system, you were rewriting the source code. They never realized that the entire time they were running the same predictable script, you were constructing a new operating system, one where their commands had no power. That's why they stare at you now with that unnerving mix of awe and dread. You're like a scientific specimen that shouldn't logically exist, a creature that contradicts their understanding of natural laws. They want to study you, dissect you, analyze you, but they're afraid. afraid that your resilience might be contagious, afraid that others might discover your methods, afraid that your immunity might spread and render their weaponry obsolete. And here's the critical thing. Digesting that level of pain alters your palate forever. Ordinary emotions feel flat. Average relationships feel weightless. Everyday problems feel laughably small. You developed a tolerance, a hunger, an appetite for intensity that most people can't even fathom. It's not that you seek chaos for entertainment. It's that chaos no longer intimidates you. Comfort doesn't sedate you. Instability doesn't shake you. The environment that raised you gave you an education no institution could replicate. You took courses without syllabi, mastered subjects without textbooks, earned credentials in survival that don't officially exist. You graduated from invisible universities, built out of nights spent awake, days spent navigating emotional minefields, years spent decoding the intentions of people who spoke in weaponized language. You earned a PhD in psychological warfare long before you earned any recognition from the world. And now here you stand, still breathing, still functioning, still evolving into something even the architects of your suffering could never predict. You are the living contradiction to every prophecy of your collapse. You are the quiet, inconvenient truth that their weapons failed. You are the proof that some souls don't break, they transform. And no matter who doubts it, fears it, or tries to rewrite it, the reality remains unshakable. You did not just survive the impossible, you became the impossible. And now here you stand, still breathing, still functioning, still evolving into something even the architects of your suffering could never predict. You are the living contradiction to every prophecy of your collapse. You are the quiet, inconvenient truth that their weapons failed. You are the proof that some souls don't break, they transform. And no matter who doubts it, fears it, or tries to rewrite it, the reality remains unshakable. You did not just survive the impossible, you became the impossible. So if this message reached you at the right moment, if it reminded you of who you are and what you've overcome, don't keep it in the dark. Like it, share it, let it reach someone who needs this reminder as badly as you once did. And if you feel called to support the work that keeps messages like this alive, consider donating. Every gesture, big or small, truly helps. Thank you for being here. Thank you for surviving. Thank you for your support.